Welcome to the Humans and AI podcast, powered by AI Frontier Network. I'm your host, Flor Laorga. Each episode, we dive into the human story shaping artificial intelligence through the journeys of entrepreneurs, builders, and leaders. We explore the insights, challenges, and visions for the future of AI and humanity. Let's uncover the human side of AI together. Great. Nice to meet you, Spence. Thanks very much for joining the Humans and AI podcast. I appreciate making time for this. And yeah, let's get to know you more. So, Spence, you are the co founder and CEO of Lilt, right? B2B AI platform for AI translation. Before starting with all your career in your entrepreneurial career, I would like to understand. I'm curious about your love for languages. I saw that you actually learned Arabic. So, yeah, I'm curious about how did that interest in you started?
Yeah, well, great to meet you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I got interested in languages about 20 years ago. After college, I think like probably a lot of Americans, I was moved deeply by 9/11 and got interested in the Middle East and wanted to understand the region better. And so I moved to the Middle East and with the goal of learning Arabic. And then I discovered that I loved languages, and I think the way that you understand culture and people through language. And around that time, Google Translate came out. And so I felt like using machines to communicate was just going to be one of the most impactful things that digital technology would have on society, and then AI in particular. And so I left my job and went to Stanford and started working on multilingual AI, so different applications of building AI systems to communicate and process different languages.
Great. I saw so that you co-founded this with your co-founder, obviously, who is as well. You guys met in a Google Translate, right?
That's
So
correct.
that's very interesting. So how does it work? Like, how was the process and the journey of building Lilt?
Yeah, I was in at Stanford in the AI lab at the time. My co-founder, John DeNaro, he had completed his PhD, also working on multilingual AI at Berkeley, and then had gone to Google to start working on Google Translate. And Google for forever has had people who are in grad school will then go do a research internship or spend some time at Google. And I went and worked with John for a while I was in grad school, and we found that we became friends, so that was important. And we also found that we had interested in the same research topics, motivated, and both felt like AI would have this huge impact on eliminating language barriers. And then we were both interested in business. I had worked before grad school. John had worked at McKinsey before he went to grad school. And we thought about Lilt, what we created as Lilt, as the sort of piece of software we thought that Google Translate would eliminate language barriers for people. So you would have your phone or you would have an earpiece, and you and I would be able to speak to each other in different languages. And then we thought about how would you do that for an entire company? Like an organization has to communicate too, and operates in a lot of different regions and communicates with customers and users, and a lot of that is done manually. So we thought about Lilt as a piece of software and AI infrastructure that would enable an organization to operate globally across language barriers.
Yeah, actually, business I think is not local anymore; it's just global. So it makes very much sense. Yeah, you were talking about AI and the impact in the AI translation, but could you share a little bit more in your experience since you are building a platform for that on purpose? So, what is the real impact of AI and how it helps to in the field of translation and localization too?
I'll give you an example. We work with all large organizations, so large enterprises, and that includes government. It used to be in the United States, all of the weather information, you would think weather alerts, those are all in English. But we have a lot of people that speak different languages in the United States, and so we started working with the US government several years ago. And now all of the weather alerts, this is really high stakes information, like a tornado is coming, there's a hurricane coming, there's a flood, you should leave. That all comes from the National Weather Service. And it used to be that the Weather Service generated everything in English and then had a bunch of people who would manually translate a subset of it into Spanish. And those are meteorologists. And we don't have enough meteorologists in the US. So we really need meteorologists doing meteorology, not translating weather alerts into Spanish. And so what we did was, in partnership with the Weather Service, we had the meteorologists train custom models. And now all the weather alerts in the US that come out in languages other than English are entirely AI generated. And we've expanded Spanish, Vietnamese, American Samoan, Tagalog for the Philippines. All of that is AI generated. So that's a capability that didn't exist a couple of years ago, and now it does.
Yeah. Now talking a little bit about how everything is now is AI generated, but I also see that in your on Lilt website, you've said as well that it's verified by human experts. So how do you balance that? Like what is AI generated with the human supervision?
Well, what I worked on at Stanford was human in the loop systems. And so there are a lot of applications like the Weather Service application I mentioned, and many other applications in enterprise where you need human certification that the output is correct. So I think one of the big differences between generative AI, like you generate an image, you generate a document, there's no standard that it has to be correct. In a lot of consumer applications, you generate an AI song that you want to listen to. It's okay if there are problems with the song or problems with the image or whatever the case may be. But in a lot of business applications, you have a requirement for correctness. If it's financial information, if it's clinical trial information, if it's a large company that has a lot of brand risk and is under a lot of scrutiny, then you need some type of human verification that the output of the AI system is correct. And so then the question becomes, how do you do that as efficiently and quickly as possible? And so Lilt is a end-to-end solution, meaning customers can use our product for AI workflows for speech, video, and text. And then they can incorporate human verification directly in those workflows through the platform. And those are people human experts that we source and manage. And these are people that they don't just speak German or they speak Japanese. They're people with engineering degrees, legal degrees, clinical training, and we source and manage this large group of experts across about 100 different languages that can be incorporated into these AI workflows on demand by our customers.
Okay, so I guess that you work with professionals, professional translators.
Yeah, they're not necessarily translators, so they're people that have domain expertise in another language. So some of it's monolingual work. There's somebody who can generate information in Japanese or verify that information in Japanese is correct. Some of them are bilingual. So I would think about it as bilingual human experts. Some of them are monolingual human experts, but they are people who have domain expertise in another language and can verify that the output of an AI system is correct.
Yeah, okay. How do they embrace AI? Because there's all these things that AI is replacing jobs. So I would like to kind of understand how your team is kind of embracing that.
Yeah, I think certainly it's interesting. There are more and more applications where you can use AI without human verification, whereas 5 years ago, AI systems would make basic mistakes. So you wouldn't use it in a lot of different applications if you had any requirement for accuracy. But the systems are a lot more accurate now. At the same time, because the systems are so good, I think what we've noticed is that business expectations for expertise have gone up. And so AI is going into more and more complex use cases where you need human expertise to improve upon what the AI system is doing. And so I think you can verify this by looking at the appetite of the foundation model builders for human expertise. They're spending a huge amount of money on post-training data and human expert evaluation to make these models more capable. And I think the same thing applies when you're deploying AI systems into business scenarios where you have complex workflows and you have a standard of accuracy that is very high. You need human experts to be able to do that. And language is an interesting thing because you have a business maybe that's operating in 30 different countries or 50 different countries, but the business has a native language too. It speaks English or it speaks Spanish, and it doesn't have people who are experts in all of the different capabilities, marketing, sales, research and development in those 30 different languages. So it's got to get that expertise from somewhere.
Yeah. So, what can humans do in translation that AI can't, if there's anything? Right?
Yeah, the first thing is providing a certification that something is correct. There are scenarios, financial scenarios, legal scenarios. You cannot submit a legal document to a court that is AI generated, for example. It has to have human eyeballs on it. So a human certification is required in those cases. The other thing that I think is maybe not obvious unless you speak multiple languages, but language is subtle. And so even today, the output of the system, you'll hear, for example, regional marketing teams. I was on a call yesterday about this. They'll say, this doesn't sound like our business. And this was an AI native company I was on a call with. And the reason for that has to do with context. So, what you've got to do to make these AI models specific to the context of a business is organize this messy context about how a business talks about itself, how it strategizes, how it thinks about itself in a manner that you can get that into an AI model. So, our product has what's called a context database, and it organizes that information for training and retrieval to make the AI models more specific to the business. But then people have context for these businesses too. So I think a lot of it comes down to the context required to get the subtlety in language right. The translation systems, they don't make linguistic or grammatical mistakes anymore. It used to be the case that they would do that. They don't do that anymore. But the context that is required to get that right is hard. And I think you can look at this, maybe anybody who's tried to use AI for their email. I still don't use AI for my email. Like, why is that? It's because there's a lot of information that you need to know for who you're responding to, what the world context is to be able to do that, and how I tend to write, how I write for different audiences. And sure, you could like capture all of that, but how? I think that's the puzzling thing to think about with language. Some of these really mundane applications like text messaging or email, like why isn't all of that AI generated? And really, it comes down to context. And that applies for multilingual. Now, just imagine like you don't speak the language that you're communicating in. It gets even more complicated.
Okay, makes sense. And how do you differentiate yourself from your competitors?
Yeah, our market's kind of interesting. Traditionally, for a business to communicate across languages, it needs a couple of different vendor relationships. So it needs a piece of software to connect its systems together. So, like Salesforce, Zendesk, Google Drive, the places where the data in a business is stored. It needs an AI provider. And so, into that piece of software, you would connect like Google Translate or something like that. And then it needs a service provider to provide human beings, human experts for verification. And so you're managing like at least three vendors and you've got to put these pieces together. What we would really like is like Google Translate with a quality guarantee. We would like it to just be AI and then I can call on human beings when I need it. And so Lilt is all three of those things. It's a workflow platform with AI models that customize to your business. And then it has human experts built into the workflows that you can call upon when you need them. So you can think about us as vertically integrated or end to end is another way to describe it. And I think that is how you build AI native solutions for a lot of different business applications. But I think this is a really good one. And I think we're the category leader in building these vertically integrated solutions for multilingual communication.
Great. Do you have any key competitor that keeps you pushing through your mission at Lilt?
Yes, it is so we are multilingual. It's a big services business. So it's about a $30 billion a year market. It's existed for, I don't know, since the advent of agriculture or something. You've had people facilitating cross-lingual communication, but it hasn't changed very much in a lot of years. And so I think there are a lot of startups like ours that are going into professional services industries. There's something like $4 trillion spent on professional services in the United States every year. So I think the total software market is like $1 trillion, something like that. So the professional services market is 4 times larger than the total software market. And I think that's the real opportunity for AI, is to go start automating some of these professional services. And we are up against a very large number of professional services providers that they all know that they have to adopt AI as well to compete. But crucially, they're not software companies. So they are services businesses that are trying to figure out how to build software. And I think they're coming at it from, we know the services part and we need to adopt or try to learn how to build software. We're coming at it from, we know how to build software and AI systems, and then we've got to be able to provide a robust and reliable and very capable enterprise solution and be able to serve large businesses that are very demanding, have lots of very specialized requirements, and that's difficult for a business to do.
Okay. I saw in one of your posts on social media that you've been in Europe a month ago and you got some observations about how is AI evolving in Europe, as well. Europe is a multilingual continent as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like very good for actually your business. It's very good. So what are those observations that would you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Sure. We have a team. Our European team is based in London, and we have a good number of people there now. We have about 50 people in London, and our research team, our AI team, is based in Berlin, and we have about 25 or 30 people there. And we've got a good number of people in Europe for a company of our size. And that's, as you say, because Europe, the needs for cross-lingual communication are significantly higher than they are in the United States. So it's a very important market for us. I think historically, Europe, in terms of technology adoption, is follows behind the United States. It does seem to me that the adoption of these technologies on the desktop, at least for employees, like step one for a lot of CIOs, is to put some type of assistant on the desktop. So whether that's like ChatGPT Enterprise, or I saw some cases where they built an internal UI and they connected, letting the employee choose between Gemini and ChatGPT and Claude. And then once they do that, they start looking at use cases. What do people use these assistants for? And what I heard is that translation and multilingual communication is one of the top, if not the top use case that employees are using these systems for. And so then the real challenge becomes, that's awesome because it's convenient. But these general domain assistants, going back to this discussion about context, to gather the business context so that you can produce output effectively in Japanese, you need to store and manage a bunch of context, and then that has to be retrieved when somebody is producing a document or a video. And I think where we are building and what is coming is agents that plug into these desktop assistants, that then when there's that type of request, the agent goes off and handles it within the context of the workflow. And so a lot of people are focusing on how to build specialized agents within these desktop assistants to do specialized tasks, whether that's coding within the context of their source code repos, or business intelligence connected into their data warehouses, or translation language AI connected into their context database. And that's where I think agents that plug into these Gen AI platforms are really powerful.
Okay. Talking a little bit about leadership, okay, in your, because what I see now that you've got team in your team is in US, but also you have a pretty big team in Europe. So how does influence in the way that you lead? Because culture, it's a big thing in leadership. That's what I believe. So How do you kind of affects you or influence the way that you lead in US versus leading in Europe?
Well, it's a good question. I think winning teams have common cultural standards. And so we have 5 cultural pillars in our company that we call them virtues. So they're like beliefs in action. That's how we differentiate them from values. And we talk about that a lot. And they span cultures. I think they're characteristics of winning teams and winning businesses that put customers work backwards from what a customer needs, which is why businesses exist. They exist to serve customers. I think that matters a lot. Our big presences are in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany, and those are very different work cultures. Those are very different countries. They're very different work cultures as well. And so I think what's been very important for us is for me to go there and spend time with the team. That's important. And the second thing is to have a strong leader in each one of those offices. And we found it's valuable to have some people who have moved from the US to those offices to bring our culture there, but then also people who are there who are standard bearers for the way that we work and can build that there. So in each one of those offices, we have somebody who moved there from the US. And then we also have somebody who's a leader, a senior leader from that country. And those two working together, I think, is a really powerful combination.
Yeah, 100%. Looking ahead, Spence, what how do you see AI, the evolution of AI in your field, which is AI translation? Yeah.
It's a foot race. The models are getting really good. And so I think the foot race is really at the application level, which is there's never been a great way to compete at the model level. Google Translate has been great for 20 years and continues to be great. Gemini is a really capable multilingual model. It was never our instinct to try to compete at the model level. Where there is opportunity for, I think, for emerging companies is at the application level and building really great products that are in the workflow of people who are trying to do a job. And that's tricky to do in the enterprise because these systems, business users prize reliability. And these systems are non-deterministic, especially agentic systems. So building reliability into these systems is, I think, the frontier. And I think solving that problem at the product level is a combination of product design, post-training, how you architect the workflows is where new category, like we're competing and new category leaders will emerge.
Yeah, there's a lot of I've got, for example, some networks that they already have the meta glasses, right? So that actually they use it as a translation, AI translation thing as well. When they are looking at people or text, they can use it as a translator. So what is your perspective about that? Yeah.
Repeat the question. What is
Yeah.
that?
So basically everybody, more and more people are using these meta glasses, right?
I see.
That can use for translation as well, because well, those meta classes can do anything right now. What is your perspective about that? Because you guys are doing as well with Lilt, but you're not doing exactly that. But what is your do you see that's kind of as well kind of future for you guys or not?
No, I think there's a bit of confusion. I see people confuse consumer use cases and business use cases. These are very different. Like compute consumer use cases usually don't have much of a quality standard. They're very transactional, which is the basic interaction with a chatbot is like very transactional. Like it's organized as a chat. You have a transactional chat and then you move on to the next one. But business doesn't work that way. Businesses have workflows, which usually mean teams of people working together. And as soon as you have teams of people working together, you have a coordination problem. And I think it's certainly consumer developments influence the way you build business applications. But I think that thinking deeply, it's not to say I think we should build smart glasses or I'm worried that smart glasses are going to put us out of business or something like that. I think there are deeper things that one might think about that are I think are at the more strategic level. One could think about, for example, there's been some speculation that app building products like Lovable and Replit and V0 and stuff like that will just render all software obsolete. I'll just be like, oh, vibe code me Lilt or vibe code me Salesforce, and I'm done. And I think that's overblown because complex business software systems, they're engineered for a high degree of reliability. The cost of developing and maintaining them is very high. And it's just a little bit hard to see that everybody just vibe codes their payroll system and vibe codes their CRM and vibe codes their source code repository. That could happen. It could happen. But I think that that's another case where one should not construe that just because you can vibe code your wedding website now, you can suddenly vibe code a CRM.
Okay, Spence. Thanks very much for joining the Humans and AI podcast, and I appreciate very much this chat.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to the Humans and AI podcast. We are here to spotlight the people making AI more human, one story at a time. See you in the next episode.